Hi, I'm Tim Miller with Mountain Castle Soil and Water Conservation District, and here we are on Ellis Run, which is in the Buchanan area. We're going to do some water quality tests to try and figure out how clean the water is on the creek. So first off, we want to talk a little bit about a watershed address. So Ellis Run flows into Back Creek, and Back Creek flows into Looney Creek, and Looney Creek flows into James River, and James River flows to Chesapeake Bay. So our watershed address where we're standing right now is Ellis Run, Back Creek, Looney Creek, James River, Chesapeake Bay. So let's get in the water and start to run some tests. So the first test that we have today is temperature. So we want to see how cold the water is. It's really important because the colder the water, the more dissolved oxygen is in it. So we want our creeks to stay nice and cold. And it may be kind of hard to see here, but temperature here is about 58 degrees Fahrenheit. And just for the Celsius fans out there, we have it's about 5 degrees Celsius, which is pretty cold. So that's a good sign. It's a good parameter to look at first. Remember, the colder the water, the better for fish and other aquatic life. So this is Georgia. She's my helper for today, and we're gonna test the water's pH. And it's a pretty simple test. We're gonna use a tablet, and she's popped the tablet out of the pH blister pack. She's got 10 milliliters of water. She put it on, cap on, the tablet's in. She's gonna give it a nice shake. And we pull back out a little bit. And she can read this color as soon as the tablet is dissolved, which doesn't take too long. So the color's changing, as you can see. And as soon as the color is changed and the tablet is dissolved, we can figure out what the pH of the water is. So if you remember, pH is a measure of how acidic or basic the water is. And we want our creek pH to be around 7, which is neutral. If we go lower than 7, that means it's on the acid side. If we go higher than 7, that means it's on the basic side. So creek water, somewhere in the 7 neighborhood, is where we want it to be. So, what do you think? Is the tablet dissolved?
Yeah.
Okay, so we can take a look and hold it there. So it looks like, what do you think, Georgia?
7.
I'm right at 7. So right at neutral, which is good. So that's a pretty good parameter also. So temperature was pretty good, pH is good. Now we'll move on to some others. Okay, so now Georgia's going to test for phosphate. So a similar way, she's got one phosphate tab. She's going to put in 5 milliliters of creek water. We've already pulled out of the stream. She's going to give it a good shake until the tablet is dissolved. And this one you have to wait a few minutes after the tablet's dissolved before you read it. We have to wait 5 minutes. So while she's shaking and dissolving, we'll talk a little bit about what phosphate measures. There are 2 types of pollution that we really don't want in the creek. One of them is nutrient pollution. So nutrients would come from animal waste or human waste or chemical fertilizers farmers may put on fields. And phosphate is an example of one of those nutrients. So we really don't want much phosphate at all. Maybe 1 part per million would be okay, but we don't want to go much higher than that. So phosphate presence in the creek means that somehow we're getting nutrients either through animal waste, most likely around here is animal waste, or some other nutrient source. So is the tablet dissolved, Georgia?
No.
Not quite, getting close. Okay, so we will come back here in 5 minutes and see what the result is for our phosphate test. Okay, it's been 5 minutes, so we're going to read our phosphate results. Georgia, what do you think? It's definitely gotten a little blue. Remember, phosphate is a nutrient that we don't want to see much of in the creek. So how much would you say we got?
2?
Maybe 1 part per million, but not quite 2. Okay, so 1 part per million shows that there's some nutrients in the creek, but not really enough to cause a huge problem, at least not right here. So again, a pretty good result. I'll take that. I'm going to do a nitrate test. So she has a little dipstick. She's going to dip the strip into the creek sample, give it a little shake, We're going to wait about 60 seconds. You can stop shaking, just kind of wait there. And as we're waiting, we can talk a little bit about nitrate. Nitrate is also a nutrient, so just like phosphate, we don't want to see much nitrate in our creeks. It can become a serious problem with eutrophication as we go downstream and more nutrients accumulate. So we really want to see nitrate to be a minimum. We want to see phosphate again to be a minimum. We don't want to see a lot of those things in our creek. And again, those nutrients are getting to the creek either through animal waste or human waste. I know, ooh, gross. Or chemical fertilizer that farmers or homeowners may put on their grass or their fields. So that's been close to a minute, Georgia. You want to pull the scale up there and hold it up, and we're going to see how dark, how pink is that strip. And right now it looks like it's not really pink at all, right? So we have very low nitrate, which is it's good. So Georgia's back, and the next test we're doing is dissolved oxygen. So she's wearing goggles because there's a little bit of glass here. We don't want her to get any glass in her eye, so we're gonna wear the goggles. So she's got a sample, and she's gonna break off the tip of the sample, and the vial's gonna fill up with water. Okay, you can pull it out. So a fixed amount of sample from the creek went into this vial, so you automatically see a color change. And we're going to wait just a few more seconds before we try to measure how much color changed. Dissolved oxygen is a really important part of the creek, especially if you're a fish or a macroinvertebrate or something that's breathing dissolved oxygen through gills. So the higher the dissolved oxygen, the better the creek, for the creek and the animals that live in it. So that's probably a long enough time. We're going to compare it to other known. Slide it down in between there. We're going to try and see. Hold it down a little bit further down so we see the top part. That'll work. Okay, so what do you think? She's kind of moving it around to see which does it fit, which is the closest to.
8. So
you're thinking 8? Maybe between, I think it's darker than a 6 for sure. I think maybe 8 is what we're looking at. So 8's pretty good. It's about the minimum that I would want to see. So 8 parts per million dissolved oxygen. Not a bad result. What we're going to do before we look at some critters is our sediment test. So we call this turbidity, which is the measurement of how much sediment or soil is in the water. So what we do is we just fill this container up about yay full, and down inside you see this black little circle called a Secchi disc, and we just kind of look to see how clear, how dark black is the black parts of the circle. The blacker it is, obviously the clearer the water is. So it looks like from here that our turbidity measurement is about 0, or real close to it. Now you can imagine if we're going to look at this after a flood, where the water may be more chocolate milk colored, you may not see any of the disc. So it just depends on what how much sediment's in the water at any given time. But we're kind of looking for what's normal. So normal today is pretty much 0, which again is really good, because sediment in the water is the other pollutant we're really worried about. So nutrients and sediment are the two biggies. And on both those, this part of Ellis Run looks pretty good. So now it's time to take a look and see what the bugs tell us. So that'll be the next part.